So in general, whenever we go through times, and we're going through an interesting time now, the question we have to ask ourselves every single time is, what is Hashem calling upon me to do? It's not an easy question to answer. In other words, what is the call of the hour? What am I being called upon to do? And it doesn't mean that you necessarily can explain why Hashem's doing what he's doing. But ever since God called onto Avraham Avinu, Abraham, and he said, Avram, Avram, and Avram responded and said, Hineni, here am I. That's the way a Jew responds whenever God calls upon them. They say, Hineni, here am I. So there's no question that at the time that we're speaking right now, God is calling upon each and every one of us and saying, calling our name. And the question is, are we answering that call? You know, there's a big word that's been going around the community recently, not only this community, around the world. Simon Sinek spoke about it when he spoke to the local Johannesburg community, South African Jewish community. The word is pivot, P-I-V-O-T, which pivot basically means to reinvent yourself, to see everything in a new perspective. Basically, if you want to keep your job in today's day and age, you have to redefine your job, because 99% of people are doing work that not necessarily they were doing 4 or 5 months ago, but in order to keep their job, in order to be successful, they have to pivot, which I just checked the dictionary. It means turn on, or as if on a pivot. In other words, you're basically you're looking for something. You're redefining. You're taking a new direction. The pivot of community life, etc. So the question I'm going to ask you right now is, how is our Yiddishkeit pivoting? Is our Yiddishkeit redefining itself? Are we allowing Yiddishkeit to take itself to a new level? Because, as I mentioned yesterday, just listening to the doctors, it's becoming clearer and clearer that unless Mashiach comes, there is no Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot and Shul. Give it up. It's over. Not happening. Not in Johannesburg. Not in Gauteng. Maybe in Cape Town with limitations, but in Gauteng, there's no Rosh Hashanah, there's no Yom Kippur, there's no Sukkot and Shul. It looks like we're still going to be in the midst of the virus, or at least just at the beginning of it starting to taper off, but not a good space. So that forces you to ask a certain question, and that is, what is my Yiddishkeit going to look like? So in the past 4 months, we've learned a few lessons about Yiddishkeit. Number one, that shul is important, but home is more important, and that Yiddishkeit could survive at home. Number two, that education and learning has grown in this time than it's ever grown before. More people are learning Torah than ever before, going on Zoom and learning. So learning, unfortunately, due to the circumstances, has become the center. It's not unfortunate. What I'm saying is, due to the circumstances, we've lost a big part of what davening is all about, the minyan, the experience, the social element, but learning has grown. So I think we've also learned the power of learning. So we've learned that the home is powerful. We've learned that learning is powerful. We've learned how Judaism puts life as the ultimate priority. We've learned that to build communities, you don't only need centers, you could use technology. And like, I wonder if not for COVID, how long it would have taken to adopt to things like Zoom. Fact is, we have 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds who all came and adapted quickly to Zoom and to the technology, because we're trying to redefine. So what do you know about Yiddishkeit that you didn't know before? Is really the question that I'm asking today. What do you know about Yiddishkeit that maybe became crystal clear? So yes, you've learned about the preciousness of life. You've learned about the power of home. What else have you learned? What do you know now that you didn't know before? So I'm going to offer a few suggestions which I believe are worth reflecting upon in what we're learning about Yiddishkeit at this time. First of all, we're learning that we're one global community. With technology, you could go listen to shiurim from anywhere around the world, and you could find a rabbi or a speaker or a rebbitzin that resonates with you, and you could literally listen to them all day. And the fact is that the amount of Torah and amount of interesting speakers that are out there is unbelievable. And each and every one of us has an incredible opportunity to tap in to all the information that we get. So Torah has become more accessible than ever before, which I think is an incredible revolution. We also have the potential to educate ourselves more than ever before. You have websites, you have data, you have information. If you wanted to become a Torah scholar and you were dedicated to it, you could teach yourself everything. It's all there in English. The other thing we learned about Judaism is the importance of chesed. We've learned how precious life is, and that much we said, that we're willing to shut everything down for that. But ultimately, what most shuls have become more than anything is chesed. I receive more phone calls from people these days, and I reach out to more people these days, and people are really struggling. And what shul can offer them is just a listening ear, sometimes financial assistance, but the importance of kindness and human connection throughout life. And I think the lack of the social space that we have is making that feeling much stronger, this necessity, the fact that each and every one of us has an obligation to reach out to others and to connect, to impact, to make a difference in the lives of other people. I think we're learning that our homes need to be stronger. Unfortunately, quite a few people's marriages are wobbly. A lot of home dynamics are wobbly. And because we're spending so much time with a spouse, which means that you could be married to somebody for many years, but ultimately, how solid is the home foundation? How much can it tolerate? Because there's no question that right now there's a big strain on home dynamics for some people. And how strong is the home? You know, for most people, marriage is something like this. You date for a few years, you decide that you're compatible, you get married, and then you try to just live life together for many years. And life keeps you busy. He has a job, she has a job, they take the kids to school, etc., etc. And then you're stuck. You're stuck with each other. And the question is, how much of a friendship and how much space have we created for each other in the marriage? One thing I've learned is people could be married 50 years and their marriage is as mature as a 5-year marriage. And some people could be married 50 years and the marriage is mature as a 100-year marriage. In other words, they've really evolved together. They've really grown together. They really become a unit. So I think an important thing to think about during this time is how strong is our family life? Because family life, like any other investment, needs an incredible amount of work. Business needs work, marriage is not a default. Even if you happen to like each other and that's, you know, it's good going and it's a good way to start, ultimately working on our character, working on being less selfish, working on blowing up less, managing our anger, managing our impulse, managing our focus, giving for the other person is an incredible challenge in all times, especially now. And I think that it's important to think about how solid is our relationship with our kids. You know, I've been in the past few months, I've discovered some things are better than I thought and some things are not as good as I thought. In other words, relationship-wise, and certain things with my children, etc., have to be worked upon. What else have I learned? I've learned that love is not only about quality time, it's also about quantity time. In other words, I've gotten to know my kids in ways I haven't. And although I love my kids till now, you can't really get to know your kids from an hour or two a week. You have to get to know your kids and the people in your life for a much deeper amount of time. And it's been a hard ride to get to know your kids in a really deep level and to see them, because now you're their teacher, you're their parent, you're their homeschool, you're everything. And now you're getting to see them throughout all the periods of the day and all the dynamics and all the circumstances, and you're getting to know them. And you get to know yourself. For me, another big thing of this journey is getting to know myself. If you would ask me, could I survive 4 months at home with 6 kids and stay sane? I would say no. And now if you would ask me, I would still say no. No, just kidding. It's funny. A lot of people recently in the past week or so have told me, Rabbi, keep it, the hardest thing now is becoming to keep sanity. I think people are reaching a tipping point where like they feel like they're being pushed over the edge. I think I've learned that I don't need as many stuff in my life to make me happy as I thought I do. A holiday is nice, but I could survive without it if necessary. I could survive without travel. I could survive with a very basic car because I'm pretty much not going anywhere. I could survive with less shopping. I could survive with less things at home. I think this time is just an incredible classroom. That's the way I see it. I want to call it almost the COVID classroom, because it's a classroom of life. It's teaching us stuff that we don't know. It's stuff about ourselves and about the world that we don't know. And I see life in general as a classroom. Life is just sending us teachable moments every single day, lessons, but especially COVID. It's like an extra special classroom where we're learning like a lot of stuff in a relatively short amount of time about the world and about ourselves, about how strong technology is and how weak technology is, how advanced our society is and how unadvanced our society is. Like I was telling my family what we're going through now in Gauteng, and they're saying it feels like New York 4 months ago, but they said, but you had 4 months to prepare for this. Couldn't you guys go through it differently than New York? They said, yeah, we had 4 months to prepare, but ultimately once the virus hits, it's hitting as if we didn't prepare for 4 months. In other words, with all the preparation that we did and all the lockdown and this and that, ultimately when it hit and it's taking over the community. Unfortunately, Glen Hazel, like it's rampant. Like I'm personally very uncomfortable to even go shopping in the kosher shops this week. Just gonna buy everything at Woolworths and whatever, and like survive on whatever kosher meat I have in the freezer. I don't want to go into that area. So yeah, I'm discovering that the world and governments and scientists are not the biggest geniuses on the planet. I mean, I think I always knew that, and I'm not blaming them. I think scientists are doing incredible work, doctors are doing incredible work, but this has been a very humbling experience about what they know and what they don't know. It's interesting, the Hebrew year this year is Tafshin Pei, 57780. And the words Tafshin Pei is, there's a verse in Tehillim that says, Sfat lo yadati eshma, which literally translates as, I hear constantly, I don't know from the mouth. But the word Sfat, it has the same, Shin Pei Tef, has the same letters as Taf Shin Pei. And the rabbi is like, the word that's been going around, some rabbis have been quoting, etc., is Taf Shin Pei, the year 5780, is the year that I hear all day, I don't know. How long is the virus going to last? I don't know. How powerful is the virus? I don't know. Is it only for older people? I don't know. How long is the economy going to be suffering? I don't know. Pretty much, this has been the year that we've heard more I don't knows than ever before. And anybody that's honestly honest is saying I don't know, because really, we don't know. And Rabbi, what could you tell me about what's going to happen in the next few months? I don't know. And what's shul going to look like when we get back? I don't know. When are we going back to shul? I don't know. How many people are suffering? I don't know. Is it affecting kids or is it only adults? I don't know. I don't know. It's the year of I don't know. It's a very humbling year to realize we know nothing. And I have to say, if I was an atheist during this time, I would really struggle, because like, if I don't know and nobody knows, who does know? At least God. At least there's one being in this planet that knows where things are going and like hopefully has a plan. But imagine I'm an atheist and I believe that there is no plan and we're just a bunch of apes on a desert or in the jungle trying to figure out how to survive, and there's no master plan and just one big I don't know. That's very despairing. So for me, it's been a gift has been faith. Faith has been an absolute gift during this time. And I think that's one of the big lessons I've learned is how important faith is in my life. How important it is to actually believe that there's a creator who's managing stuff. That's why Torah has also become more important in my life. Because Torah and Torah's wisdom and Torah's guidance and the meaning of life and the purpose and history of Jewish history have all helped me ground myself a bit in this world and to be able to make some sense of this absolute madness that we're living through. So I've appreciated Torah in a way that I've never appreciated before. I open up and I'm trying to gain insight from God's word and, realizing that the only word that is true and absolutely true is God's word. Because pretty much what all human beings are saying is, I don't know. And I think it's a very humbling experience to realize that human beings don't know that much. Like there was a book that came out a few years ago. Very interesting book. Part of the book I agreed with every word, and part of the book I disagreed with every word. And pretty much his argument was, I forgot what the name of the author is, that the world's become a better place in the last few hundred years. It's better than it's ever been before. And if you look at the facts, we're living in incredible times. But so that I agreed with on the most part till 2020, but even 2020, I still think the fact is, had we gone through this virus in 1980, it would have been a million times harder without technology. But the argument he said is that the reason why the world's become better in the last few hundred years is because we've become much more scientific. We've become much more advanced. We've started using logic much more. And for me, I disagreed with that because if logic is what makes the world go better, then how illogical were the Nazis? I think the Nazis were the kings of logic. Logic doesn't save the world, morality saves the world. Logic itself just destroys the world. We have this imagination. Often you hear the future of Africa and the future of third world countries is everyone gets an education. As if the Nazis knew math, they wouldn't kill Jews. Really? Because knowing math and science is a solution to world's problems, right? If there's ever been an argument for that, the argument is Nazis, the Germans, who were the most educated. Math doesn't make the world a better place, and science doesn't make the world a better place, and literature doesn't make the world a better place. It's nice, it's important, but that's not the tool to make the world a better place. What makes the world a better place is the idea that there's a creator who watches everything we do and has a moral code for each and every one of us to behave. Because if logic is what's going to dictate this world, if all we need is a bunch of scientists to become the new theologians of the world, then we're a mess. Could you imagine if the scientists now become the rabbis, the theologians, the religious leaders, and all their ideas to us are based on science? What would be moral? What wouldn't be moral? I mean, the scientists in Germany thought it was moral to kill disabled people. Other people, the scientists in that time, felt that race was a real science. Today we call it pseudoscience, fake science. But at the time, the Nazis found the science of race to be an absolutely accurate science. Science of gender, science of a lot of stuff. And, I used to believe that most scientists are objective and are looking for the truth. I still believe that most of them try to look for the truth, but there's no question that every scientist comes into their study with bias. And usually it's an atheistic bias. Okay, so I always find it fascinating listening to scientists talk. And I mean, I love good science. I mean, interesting science is fascinating. I wish I could understand more of it. But I love when they talk and they're always like, so the reason human beings have evolved this way is because once upon a time we were cavemen and the only way to survive was from the tiger by staying in groups. And you're like, dude, that's hypothesis. That's not fact. You have no way to know why we evolved a certain way. It's an hypothesis. Maybe 8 million years ago when we were a bunch of apes in the jungle and the predator was trying to come to us, we developed a mechanism of survival of the fittest, or a hunter. What was I listening to recently? The speaker was trying to explain why human beings suffer from fear. Because the only way to know, the only way to react to a lion that's coming to eat you up is to get a panic and therefore run away. Okay, so that's why fear came into the human being. Really, do you know that? Were you there 8 million years ago to tell me that that's how it evolved? So often scientists will start telling you hypothesis, but they say hypothesis a fact. And I've always believed, and now I believe more than ever, that science has to leave science for science, and faith and religion and what to believe keep for the religions, for the theologians. In other words, a scientist should not be telling me what's moral or what's not moral. Scientists should not be telling us if we should protect the elderly and shut down economies or not. Scientists can offer statistics, but ultimately, the ultimate decision about protection of life has to come from people who believe in the value of life. Science doesn't believe in the value of life. Scientifically, what's the reason to preserve human beings? Scientifically, what's the reason that 90-year-olds shouldn't just die? Unfortunately, in our community this week, we've lost a few 80-year-olds and 90-year-olds due to COVID. According to pure science, they were going to die anyways in 5 years. What's the difference if COVID took them or not? My point is that I hope people walk out of this whole journey with an appreciation of what we know and what we don't know. And that, yes, your kid who went and got a perfect education, 8 distinctions in King David, or 0 distinctions but got a good education anyway, your kid who went to school and did well, just because they know how to split an atom, and they know algebra, and they know complicated maths, and they know how to analyze a piece of Shakespeare, that gives them no moral grounding. If you don't give your child faith, religion, a belief in a creator, a belief in a moral code that comes from Sinai, I believe we are shortchanging our children from the single most important thing that they need in life, and that is a moral code. Because really, how much is your kids' maths helping them stay sane during COVID? Nothing. And how much is their science helping them stay sane? Nothing. And how much is their education about gender helping them stay sane? Nothing. The only thing that's keeping people sane is family and morality. But how much morality did we teach our kids? How much is faith based in their life? That kindness, generosity, goodwill, social care, all these kind of things we don't teach kids in school. But ultimately, during this time of COVID, what are we realizing? That's the stuff you need. I feel bad for people who aren't blessed with family. Like I'm talking over here, I'm talking a group of people who, thank God, each of you is married, each of you have children. Could you imagine going through this alone? Like all those people who just chased their career and never built a relationship, who decide they need to be successful, and success by them only means get more degrees and more degrees and more money and more money. How much is money adding value in people's lives today? As long as you have enough to live, I'm not living any worse right now than Bill Gates. What's he doing that I can't do? He's not flying anywhere. He's not going to schmancy hotels. He's not going to fancy holidays. So honestly, me and the billionaires, the only question is how fancy the house is that we're locked in. Big deal. So their house has 8 bedrooms and my house has 4 bedrooms. And they have an indoor swimming pool and I don't have an indoor swimming pool. Big deal. That's the difference between me and the millionaire and the billionaire. Like I saw a picture yesterday on Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg and his wife wearing masks, and he encourages everybody to wear masks. Now, of course, if Mark Zuckerberg gets a mask, he gets 50,000 likes. If any other schmender puts a picture of themselves on Facebook that they're wearing a mask, they don't get any likes. But everyone wants to, look up to Mark Zuckerberg, so I'll give them a like. Anyways, and I asked myself, how much fancier is his mask than mine? Because you could be a billionaire, but how fancy could you make a mask? It has more colors, the material's more comfortable on your chin. So like for me also, this whole lesson has been a very interesting lesson on the valuelessness of money. I'm not saying money isn't important. You have to make a living. And for those who are struggling financially right now, life is really hard. I acknowledge that. But the difference between being middle class and extreme wealth at this stage So one person has the Ferrari in the garage, and I have a Honda in the garage, but both of us are not driving anywhere. So what difference is it what car you have in the garage? There's a guy in Trigoni that has 150 schmancy cars sitting in the garage. Like, unless you're a car collector, does it really make a difference how much money your car that's sitting in the garage is? Nothing. And your schmancy holiday home, it's sitting empty, nothing. So like you actually ask yourself, I've been chasing wealth my whole life. I want wealth, I want money. But what does it essentially give you? When you're locked down in your house and you can't go anywhere and you're afraid of a virus, you know, President Trump is not even more safe than me. Chances are he's more exposed. Politicians are more exposed than most of us because they still have to meet people. So like this virus is coming and saying that no matter how much money you have, you're still unprotected. No matter how much money you have, you can't really run away from it. No matter how much money you have, it's not going to make a real difference in your life right now. The fancy shops are closed anyway. And you don't want to go into the shop and sit there shopping. Okay, I'm going to get a fancy schmancy dress. No, don't go to the shop. And what are you going to get a fancy suit for? When's the next time you're ever going to wear a suit? You know, honestly, in the era of Zoom, what do? We sit with, you know, shirts and underwear because you don't have to even wear a suit. Like I actually find it so funny. Sometimes I'm with fellow rabbis on a Zoom group, and they say, "Okay, everybody, stand up and show us what you're actually wearing." And like usually, this guy's wearing jeans, this guy's wearing pajama pants, whatever. Like, yeah, as long as you from your chest up, you look like a half a mensch, then you're fantastic. So your suit means nothing. On Zoom, it makes no difference if your suit is made out of polyester or out of the best wool on the planet, 130 threads, whatever it is. It makes no difference. I can't tell if you're wearing polyester right now. I can't tell anything. In other words, value and what we think is important has been so taken away. This has been such a humbling experience for people who are chasing money. What do you need money for? What? What do you need? I'm not saying to make a living. Make a living and a little extra, fine. But this idea of wealth, other than giving charity and helping other people right now, how in the world is your money in the Seychelles helping you? It's doing nothing for you. Chances are it's just devaluing based on the economy. And it comes to mind the famous story about Sir Moses Montefiore, who was asked by the King of England how wealthy you are. And he says, give me a few days. And he comes back and he gives him a number which is much smaller than his actual wealth. And the king says, you're making a joke out of me. He says, no, because the only wealth I have actually that will always stay with me is the money I gave away on charity. So I had to go home to find out how much money I gave away in charity. Because the $1 million I gave away, that's definitely mine forever. The $1 million I have in the bank account could be devalued. It's not worth anything. It's just money in the bank. When if I did something with it, it's actually valuable. It means money in the bank maybe makes people feel good and makes their kids pray for them to die quicker. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. Like, I'll be honest, like kids who are, I've known a few guys who are not exactly the most moral, decent people. And yeah, if you ask them honestly, you know, do you wish your parents long life? They're not so sure about it. Because what if my parents live to their 90s and I only get my inheritance when I'm 65? What's the point then? I want my inheritance when I'm 40. I could still live the life. Yeah, I always say my kids are not going to be praying for me to die, because all it's going to be, it's just going to be throwing debt onto them. When my dad died in 61, it wasn't like an argument who's taking anything. It was like, okay, who's covering the debt? Thank God we made a plan and everything worked out. But I promise you, there's no family inheritance issues. Wealth is overrated. Most of what we consider important, education is overrated. But family is underrated, and faith is underrated, and character is underrated, and study is underrated, and prayer is underrated. It's these stuff that I believe we have to give more focus to. And for me, that's one of the lessons I've learned, just a few lessons. And I'd love to hear your